Hello, the intention of this video is to demonstrate how Upchain works with Catia. So we're going to start here in the web browser, or what we sometimes call the web app. Here at the left, you can see a bill of materials. Specifically, we call this an E-BOM, an engineering BOM. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll notice a column called C-BOM. That stands for CAD BOM. And in here, we can see all of the CAD files, in this case, Catia files, that are associated with this engineering bill of materials. And to be a bit more precise, each of these CAD files has a one-to-one relationship with the corresponding E-BOM item. So the CAD file and the E-BOM item are linked together. In other words, if I change this CAD assembly, it will update the bill of materials as soon as I check that assembly in. So if I change this assembly, if I add components, if I delete components, that will update this bill of materials as soon as I check that CAD data in. And of course, we'll do that here in just a few moments. The assembly we're going to be working with is just a simple vise, just a nice little assembly we can use to kind of demonstrate some of the concepts here. And so before we dive into Catia, let me just quickly describe what we call our Cad Connector. So this is our plugins page where we can download our plugins and so on. And as it says here, the Upchain Cad Connector is a hub for all of our CAD plugins. You can see the list here of the CAD systems that we support. Our focus for this video, of course, is Catia. But if you use or will use in the future any of these potential CAD systems, we've got you covered. We can help you out with that. So let's go ahead and go to Catia. Now over here on the right-hand side, you can see the Cad Connector itself. So this is the Upchain plugin, and I'm going to do all of my Upchain stuff over here on the right-hand side. So you can see my list of projects. I'm going to dive into this project called sample files. Now, the way the Cad Connector, the way the plugin is designed is we want it to be very transparent. So we want you to be able to do all of your Upchain stuff in the plugin itself. And the reason I point this out is if you are a mechanical engineer, you're a design engineer, whatever the case might be, you probably spend a lot of time in the CAD system. You might spend your entire day in CAD, in which case, we don't want you to have to leave that CAD environment to go do your Upchain stuff. We want to bring your Upchain environment, your Upchain tasks, your Upchain information. We want to bring that to you directly inside the plugin. And so when I activated this project, you can see the first thing I see here is a nice little project synopsis. I've also got access to all of my project documents. So all of the documents that are inside this project, I can get to them right here from the plugin. I don't have to exit my CAD system to get to this non-CAD information. Similarly, I can see all of my assignments in the project. In fact, we've got an assignment here called modify bar. And by the way, we're going to use the word bar and handle interchangeably here. And so if you notice down here, let me grab my highlighter. Here are my instructions. It says there's too much clearance between the handle and the handle holder, the bar holder, and we need to make the handle a bit beefier. So that's what we're going to kind of do here, okay? So this assignment, it's brought to me directly inside the plugin. All I have to do is read my instructions. I come over here. There's the assembly that I want to work with. All I have to do is just right-click on it, open it, and we're almost off to the races here. But before we open it, I just quickly want to kind of describe this dialog box. There's a couple things that are, or several things that are important to understand. Number one, Upchain obviously understands the structure of this assembly. So of course, it's going to grab all of the components in the assembly. And of course, that's what we would expect it to do. Now here at the top left, there is a configuration filter where I can select the configuration of the assembly that I want to retrieve. 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be working with the latest working. So that's what I'm going to select. Now here, I can select the version of the assembly that I want to work with. So I can step back in time. I can go to day 1, version 1, if I want to go look at that and work with it. Again, 9 times out of 10, you're probably working with the latest working version. And so let's go with that. Now, let's go ahead and click download. Now, watch how quickly it appears to download the assembly. Now, this is not a big assembly, but it did it virtually instantly, right? Instantaneously. So here's what's actually going on, okay? So when I click that download button, Upchain is looking inside what's called the local cache. The local cache is a folder on the user's local hard drive where CAD documents, CAD information, CAD objects get cached, okay? It's a lot like your web browser cache. And the reason we cache that CAD information is for performance reasons, right? We're making the assumption that when you use a CAD data, especially a CAD assembly, chances are the next day, the next week, you're going to use or access that information again. And so that information is cached locally for performance reasons so that each time you work with it, you don't have to re-download it all over again. That just doesn't make sense to do that. Now, you may say, well, what if some of those components change since the last time that I accessed the assembly, right? What if maybe this vice jaw right here, maybe my friend Mark has changed that thing since the last time I worked on the assembly? Well, when I click that download button and Upchain looks in that local cache, it checks the timestamps for every one of those files, okay? And if the files that are in the cache meet the requirements of this configuration filter here, latest working and version, okay, if that data set matches this configuration filter, and in other words, it's up to date, okay, then Upchain doesn't have to download anything out of the cloud. It can stream that information right out of the local cache, okay? Now, obviously, if one of those components are out of date, like maybe Mark has changed this vice jaw since the last time I worked on the assembly, well, of course, in that case, Upchain looks at that timestamp. It says, oh, okay, what Kevin has is out of date in that local cache, and Upchain will stream that information out of the cloud into the local cache. But again, all that's behind the scenes. Upchain takes care of all of that. Your users don't have to worry about it. They don't have to think about it. It just happens very nicely in the background. So all of that is to say that, especially if you work on larger assemblies, we've got you covered. You don't have to worry about performance. That local caching mechanism, will take care of kind of those performance issues. So let's go ahead and work on this assembly. I just clicked Open Model. And you can already see right in there, let me grab my highlighter, okay, you can already see kind of what the problem is and what we're going to work on. Let me pan this guy over just a little bit here and zoom up. So you can see that handle or that bar, there's quite a bit of clearance between the bar itself and this holder that kind of catches that bar, and of course that all rotates, right? Now, one thing I'll point out here just quickly is you'll notice some of the circles here look more like an octagon or a polygon, okay? And that is because I am using remote desktop for this Catia session. I'm remoting into another computer to access Catia. And if you've ever used remote desktop, you've probably recognized before that graphics are not that wonderful over remote desktop. And so that's the reason some of these circles here don't really look like circles, but I assure you they indeed are circles. Okay, enough about that. Let's kind of move on here. So over here on the right-hand side, in the plugin, in the Cad Connector, okay, I want to point out a couple of things here. Number one, the structure that we see here will always match the CAD structure, okay? So whatever that model is that's in session in CAD at the moment, when you click this refresh button right there, Upchain will look at that CAD structure. It's retrieving that CAD structure, and that's what you're going to see here in the plugin. Okay, so Upchain understands that CAD structure in the CAD system, whatever the CAD system is. Now, notice that this vice jaw is in kind of a green font. Okay, that green font tells me visually, very easily, that it's checked out. Now, who has the vice jaw checked out? Well, guess what? I can just hover over that little red lock symbol right there, and it tells me that my friend Mark has got that component checked out. Now, what does that really mean? Well, it means that I can't modify the jaw. I can look at it, I can assemble it, I can play with it, but I cannot modify that vice jaw until Mark checks his in or releases his checkout lock. Okay, now, if Mark does make a change, if Mark updates that vice jaw, I will immediately receive an indicator that my version is now out of date. There'll be a little information symbol there, and then I'll be able to right click on the vice jaw and click update, and it'll stream the latest version down in real time and give me that latest working copy. Okay. Now let's go work on our screw bar or our handle here. So all I have to do is right click, check out. Now, since we are in assembly mode right now, it's also by default going to check out the top level assembly. You don't have to do that, but I'm going to let it do that. Okay. So that's flipping the switch. Now look what happened on the screw bar and the vice assembly. They are now in a green font. However, they have a green lock icon that tells me I have those objects now checked out. Guess what? My colleagues, Mark, whomever, any of my colleagues who may be using the screw bar or the vice assembly are going to see a red lock icon in their environment, right? So Upchain keeps up with this concurrent engineering. It makes sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes and all these kinds of things, okay? Now let's take this screw bar. I'm just going to open it in a new window to make it a little easier to see. Again, we're going to make this thing a little beefier, so I'm just going to double click that kind of the main body there. Right now that OD is 5 millimeters. We're going to make it 6 mil. And there we go. You can see we've kind of got a chunkier bar that we can now use. And let me get out of this window and let's come back to the assembly. And you can already see that we've kind of solved our clearance problem there. And again, our bar's a little beefier, so we can put a little more leverage on that thing. Now, we're basically ready to check everything in. Before we do that, over here on the right-hand side, I want to point out a couple of things. Number one, on the top level assembly, let me grab my highlighter there. Over here on the right-hand side, the bottom right-hand side, I want to point out that the assembly currently has a file version of 6, okay? The screw bar, the handle, has a file version of 4, okay? I'm pointing those numbers out because they're going to increment during the check-in process. And let's go ahead and do that. So it's really simple. I'm just going to right-click on the top level assembly and click check-in. Now, I have my system set to present a check-in form here where I'm given the opportunity to enter in check-in comments. Again, this is not required, but I kind of like it. You know, it makes the history of the object a bit richer, right? Because you know, other users, people who are looking at the history, people that are downloading these things, they'll be able to see these check-in comments and kind of very quickly understand what actually happened here. So I'm going to say updated the OD, something like that. Okay. And that's it. It's that easy. So if you look over here on the right-hand side, the checkout locks on the screw bar and the vise have been removed. And if we look at the file version of the top level assembly, it was 6, now it's 7. And then on the screw bar, it was 4, now it's 5. Okay, so again, those file versions, that is how Upchain is tracking these incremental check-ins that we're making. And all of that, of course, is maintained in the database. And at any point in time, if I want to go look at prior file versions, that's really easy to do. It's not a problem. Okay, so hopefully you found this useful. And if you have any more questions about how Upchain works with Catia or just how Upchain works in general, please let us know. Thanks.